Our community is growing in leaps and bounds, and no wonder. We have one of the most beautiful settings in the world, some of the best recreational opportunities, a forgiving climate, a thriving arts and cultural milieu, and educational opportunities that include a university and several colleges. In fact, just today we learned that Bellingham made Forbes' list of the 14 coolest, quirky, character-filled towns to visit. No wonder when students finish their education here, they want to stay and they want to have their working life here in Whatcom County. The question is, will they be able to? Today, we're welcoming 2 presidents from our community colleges and the new economic development director at the port. We were unable, unfortunately, Dr. Randall from Western was not able to come today. But we're going to hear a lot of good things from the people that are here about what we're doing to provide educational opportunities and what we're doing to provide some direction in how we want to see our town grow. So I'd like to introduce everybody. Don Goldberg is the Director of Economic Development at the Port of Bellingham and a leader on Whatcom County's Regional Economic Development Team. Don has over 25 years of experience working in commercial real estate, nonprofit, and government sectors. Most recently, Don served as the director of the Port of Portland, where his responsibilities included creating and sustaining living wage jobs. Don earned a BS in business at the University of Wisconsin, and this is a Renaissance man, I think. Completed his training as a French chef, was valedictorian of his class. Attended the Academy of Coach Training, where he achieved a certification as an executive coach from the International Coaching Federation. He has traveled to over 75 countries, gaining familiarity with other cultures in our global economy. Next, we have the president of Whatcom Community College, Kathy Hiyane-Brown. Kathy is chair of the presidents of our state's community and technical colleges also. She has served on the board of the Northwest Economic Council, is a member of the Northwest Workforce Council, serves on the governor's Adult Education Board, Advisory Board, and is education co-chair of the National Initiative Advisory Board. She is education co-chair of the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, recognizing Whatcom Community College's national prominence in one of technology's fastest evolving job fields. And many of you will remember we had a program from the college on that. Dr. Brown holds a BA in Sociology from Grinnell College, an MA in Instructional Design and Technology from the University of Iowa, and a Doctorate of Education in Community College Education from Oregon State. Among her numerous awards, Kathy was chosen for the 2017 Female Empowerment Award from the Ferndale Chamber of Commerce. She values her time mentoring young leaders, primarily those who seek careers in higher education. And last and not least, we have Dr. Kim Perry, who's the president of Bellingham Technical College since 2015. Her prior executive experience was as the superintendent president of Butte Glen Community College District in Oroville, California. Kim's past positions include Vice President of Academic Affairs at Los Angeles City College and Dean and Vice President of Instruction at Reedley College, located in Reedley, California. Dr. Perry began her career in education as a high school agricultural and natural resources instructor in Fremont, California. In addition, for 8 years, she was executive director of the National Post-Secondary Agricultural Student Organization, which is affiliated with the National FFA, which I think is Future Farmers of America, right? FFA?
Formerly known as.
Formerly known? Okay. Kim and her husband, Ellis Evans, enjoy musical theater, country music, fine dining, and spending time with their canine and feline family. Sorry about that. So, we're going to start with Dawn. And Dawn, I hope you're going to set the stage for us for this program and tell us The pluses and minuses as we look to grow without getting rid of that quirky vibe that everybody thinks is so neat. What are you hearing from local businesses that they need to stimulate growth? And what are companies looking for when they need to locate? If you'll give us 5 or 6 minutes to get us going.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me here. Tomorrow is actually my 6-month anniversary for being in the community as well as working in this position. And I had put forth about a 12-month program. The first 3 months were to meet everybody, become part of the community, ask a lot of questions. I didn't want to come here as a know-it-all. And so that's what I've been doing. I'm a member of 7 boards now and have and growing. And I've really enjoyed being here, and so I want to thank you all because everybody has been extremely welcoming. I'm in the process of putting a team together that is, I believe for the first time, truly a Whatcom County economic development agency. An agency that is not only representing Bellingham, but it's representing and putting Whatcom County on the map. We have a lot of different communities with a lot of different resources, and opportunities are different in each community. And together, I really believe that we are much bigger than apart. So I want to find myself as a uniter amongst our communities and bring different opinions together as something positive. I also wanted to mention that we're building this team. We have one more person we'll be hiring. John Michener and Gina Stark are here today, and they are 2 other people that work with me, and I depend on them, and we're really working as a strong team. In terms of what I see for this area, I think Whatcom County has an unbelievable amount of things to offer, but we have done a pretty poor job of telling the story. There aren't many communities that have 4 higher ed, 3 colleges, and a university with over 36,000 students. That is not something you can invent or create overnight. And it's a very powerful tool, not only for our community in terms of rounding this community off, but it is what most employers are looking for. Where can we locate our company and know that we will have a high educated workforce? And what's nice about our 4 higher ed institutions is they're very different, yet they're working very closely together. So one of my goals is to create very strong partnerships amongst all our stakeholders, but in particular, the 2 colleges that are here, as well as our third one, Lummi and Western. An example of that, of course, is the Technology Development Center. That's a partnership between the Port, Western, and Bellingham Tech. That lease, I think, is coming up. It's been about a 10-year partnership, and it's really starting to pay off and take off. I'm working very closely with the Dean of Engineering at Western in order to facilitate what's next. We don't want to be creating what already has been. We want to see what are the industries that are growing and where are they going. Often we hear IT, tech, how are we going to bring tech jobs in? But tech is in everything now. We have to accept that technology is part of everything we do, whether it's in Linden on our agricultural pickers that we have some of the most technologically advanced systems for picking berries, or whether it's Fitbits on our cows. So technology is not only some IT person sitting behind a computer. We are now moving into a time where that is involved in everything. I think it's extremely important that we know that economic development can't be at the cost of quality of life. So we know that there are many communities, whether the big communities that we hear about, Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, that their economic growth has been so powerful that they have lost their quality of life, and people are no longer able to enjoy the community that they're making the money in. So I think it's extremely important as we grow our jobs that we also are mindful that we don't want to lose the community that we love. It's the community that we all choose to be here. It's what brought me here. It was the quality of life. That's a really important aspect of a balanced economic development. The other thing is, we need skilled workers. We need to be trained for the new economy. There's a gap in our economy right now where there are a lot of jobs available, and there are a lot of people looking for jobs, but they don't align. So part of my mission working with higher ed is how do we do a better job with workforce and aligning the jobs of the future with current degrees. The other thing is we need to work on infrastructure. The county, as well as areas in each of our cities, have not done a very good job of putting infrastructure in for the future. So whether it's storm water or water itself or utilities or broadband, we need to have these utilities and infrastructure in place if we're going to get companies to move here that are the jobs of the future. They won't wait 4 or 5 years until we get that and build that out. So we have to be proactive about that. And one of my jobs at the port will be to bring broadband to the rural areas so that our children in areas outside of Bellingham can have the same education that the children here can, as well as companies moving out there have the capabilities that we all need. I can keep on going if you want, but.
Well, we'll let somebody else talk for a while, and then we'll get back to you. And you certainly introduced the topic that an educated workforce is paramount for a competitive world as we're in. So what are the colleges teaching today that wasn't even on the radar 5 to 10 years ago? And what are the new programs that you're most proud of adding? And let's start with you, Kim, and then we'll go to Kathy.
Okay. So many of the occupations are still here as they were 10 or 20 years ago. They're just different. How many of you could raise the hood of your car and look at it and know what you're looking at and then diagnose it and then fix it? So we still need auto mechanics, but the job is vastly different. Technology, knowledge, ability to Google search intelligently, the ability to identify and problem solve. So that the jobs are there, they've changed. What's new at BTC, and I think is new in the entire system, is applied baccalaureate degrees. BTC has we graduated our first 2 people this last graduation, and one starting this fall, one in operations management and one in engineering technology, designed in cooperation with Western Washington. And those are designed for working adults, people who need to work full-time, as so many of our technical and community college students need to do. They need to continue to work. They need to do things like eat, pay rent, have childcare. And so they're working, and so these programs are designed online, a little face-to-face, Saturdays once a month, to get working adults a 4-year degree so that they can progress in their career. Other new programs are in line with technology positions, some business management, some technology positions. Probably our most popular programs, and we've added cohorts in them, are instrumentation, process technology. We have just a few big employers here in Whatcom, most notably in Ferndale, who employ our process technicians and instrumentation folks, but there's other careers for those folks, all the food processing that goes on, manufacturing vitamins in Skagit County. So as technology has infused its way into all of our occupations, so have other skills infused themselves into processes which were done manually before, and as was mentioned with the berry pickers, and now we need mechanics to do the berry, to troubleshoot and repair berry pickers rather than people picking berries. And in today's world, those jobs that some of my colleagues remember fondly as children in Whatcom County picking berries are now done by machines. And so the jobs have changed, as our technology has changed. And BTC has 29 advisory committees with 400 business industry representatives on those to make sure that we're changing with the times.
Thank you. Kathy?
Okay, well, when you give me the mic, I will take license to add a few comments and not directly answer the question, but,
I'll get you.
yeah, okay. I'm sure a lot of other people do the same. But I do want to thank, as I looked around the room, thank the many supporters, friends of our students, and of the work that I do at the college, and certainly those who have supported programs. And in answer to your question, I mentioned that because I could not do it alone. And it is the support of this community that has made higher education such a great proposition and such a great value here in this community. And I would encourage you all to get vested, if you're not already, in the kinds of activities that we all do, whether it's Western, BTC, or Whatcom, or Northwest Indian College. I think we're having a great impact on our community here in Whatcom County. So in terms of successful programs, I would say one of the programs that we have, one of many, that has really inspired us to do greater work nationally is in cybersecurity. You mentioned that. I have no qualifications of becoming a cybersecurity expert. I took a couple of classes long time ago in Fortran and COBOL, but those are no longer in existence. And I used to do the programming on cards, remember those cards in the basement of the library? Well, I decided to chuck that career and went into anthropology. And then my mother said, what are you going to do with an anthropology degree? But cybersecurity, as we know it, cybersecurity professionals, whether it's technicians or those with a PhD, are needed. I think at the current time, there are about 260,000 vacant positions in the whole arena of cybersecurity. And so we've decided to respond as a community college. Part of our mission is being responsive to workforce needs, is to look into that need both locally as well as regionally. And so we've done that. And so it's only been about, let's say, 5 years that we've grown this program. And I'm proud to say that the work of our faculty and staff has really elevated our work in cybersecurity education to a national level. And we're trying to meet the need. Part of our grants that we get from the Department of Labor, as well as with the National Science Foundation, is to help other institutions, both 2- and 4-year higher ed institutions, in developing the workforce that is needed in cybersecurity education. So that is just one example of what we've done recently to respond to a great workforce need that also, permeates throughout the country, if not internationally. And so it's a very exciting, evolving field, and requires, by the way, a lot of talent in terms of faculty talent, and that's one of our challenges. And I'm sure Kim can attest to the fact that we have these very highly successful programs that produce an educated and prepared workforce, but we've become very challenged in finding and attracting talent to teach in these programs.
Do you feel like that's because of the amount of money that you're able to offer? Or, I mean, we just got through touting how wonderful we are here in Bellingham. Why wouldn't anyone want to come here?
I think, I'm sure Kim has some challenges as well in this arena, but it's certainly being competitive with business and industry who can offer far more in terms of salary. I think having a great summer day like today and having mountains and water is just part of the solution to attracting candidates. But I think for some of our positions, these individuals that come to us have families, and they value the educational opportunities here, but they often can't find employment for their spouse or their partner. And so that's a real challenge in a community where the cost of living is higher than other parts of the country.
I'll just add to that. Just as technology has changed, educational instructional methodologies have changed. Particularly with our community and technical colleges, with the average age between 28 and 32, we have a lot of adult learners who require a different kind of learning environment than an 18 or 19-year-old, and we're mixing them together. And so we need people who are skilled with people as well as with their technology. And my training is in agricultural education, so I view myself as an educator who just happened to teach agriculture, which is different than being an agriculturalist who just happens to end up teaching. And so in addition to the challenges of resources, education is a social science regardless of the discipline. And so not everyone can grasp the idea of working with people in a social science kind of environment, which is education. So when we get those folks, we do a lot of intensive orientation and helping them learn how to teach. And it's a skill to be learned, and not everyone is interested in learning that skill. So it's a multifaceted issue relative to why we have challenges attracting not just good faculty, but good support staff, good administrators, and everyone else on the campus.
We're going to go back to Dawn now. Sometimes we feel like the flyover district as big decisions are being made in Vancouver and Seattle that affect us. How can we be sure we are part of the transboundary information technology corridor that we hear about all the time?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, broadband is extremely important. I personally believe that broadband is no different today than having water or power. It's a requirement, and individual households and educational institutions need it, but we also, businesses need it. And if we're looking to bring in high-paying wage jobs that are related to technology in particular, not only do we have to have broadband, we have to have the best broadband. There's the area, we're in this wonderful 6.5 million population between Seattle and Vancouver and us. And some people would spread that all the way down to Portland and call it the Cascadia Corridor, which is the movement from Portland to Vancouver, including us. As Kathy mentioned, I believe one of our biggest things that we have to overcome is our cost of living. As people want to move here, as I did, I found out that it's not cheap to come here. Housing's quite expensive, and food and other things. So now we're a two working family household, and people are looking for when are they going to enjoy this place and how are they going to afford a home and things of that nature. So it's a very big benefit to be located where we are because we're on the border of Canada. We can do a lot of business, which we do with Canada, and we're able to draw the demographics from both Seattle and Vancouver. And in many cases, people can choose to live here and work in those locations. So it's a two-way street as to the benefits of being in our location on the I-5 corridor. I think part of our geographic location is one of our largest attributes, personally.
What is the path to getting broadband out in the county and better? Maybe competition.
Yeah, well, so there's the combination of, we see it as a classic P3 model, private-public partnership, where the public works on trying to figure out the path of getting it there, and then we work with the private industries to help them facilitate getting it into these communities. Often the East County areas that don't have large populations, financially it doesn't make sense for the private entities to go out there. So that's where the public has to maybe offset that. In our case, the state of Washington has voted in broadband is now the responsibility of the port authorities in rural counties. And so that has been put onto the Port of Bellingham. So my team is in the process of working with what's called CURB, which is with the state of Washington, to get grant funding to start the study of where broadband is required, how will we get it there, what the costs will be associated, what's the path of moving forward. Skagit County is a little ahead of us, and we're working closely with Skagit on what they're already implementing and how they got there, and partnering with them for knowledge. But we will be starting studies this year as to answering that question, how are we going to do it and what will it cost?
So sticking with the technical for a while, Kathy and Kim, how much are your curriculums involved with, these are the terms that we hear all the time and we're not always sure we know what we're hearing and what it means, but the highly technical courses like artificial intelligence and robotics. You want to start, Kathy?
You're asking me about the status of those programs or those
Yes.
initiatives? When you look at our program at the college, or programs at the college, we're slightly heavier on the transfer side, and so we historically have done so in preparing students to transfer to baccalaureate degree granting institutions. However, we have a very strong professional technical program, but we've really focused our resources, and we think of it as efficiently using the resources that we have, into areas of technology, engineering, and nursing and allied health. And we've done that for several reasons. One is primarily driven by resources. We just don't have the resources to expand to other programs. Plus, we rely on some other providers, such as BTC and Western, to provide some of those other courseworks because we are discouraged from having duplicative programs.
Sure.
And so those have been our niches. And of course, within engineering, for example, our students do projects in robotics. And there are other ways of using 3D printing with art, with nursing, with engineering programs. And so there are ways that we incorporate new technologies into the curriculum. But here again, the major areas of focus for our programs, instructional programs, are in those areas that I mentioned.
And I'm not going to add too much to that because people who are doing the engineering of artificial intelligence and robotics do have 4-year degrees and higher. And so we probably do aspects of that, like a big part of artificial intelligence is computer programming. And so we both have computer programming, and if those folks want to transfer and do higher level. So we do have some transfer degrees at BTC, primarily in engineering and primarily to Western. That's in part why we were starting an applied baccalaureate degree. Quite frankly, we're demand-driven, we're community demand-driven, and we haven't had a bunch of industries coming to our doorstep and saying, we need you to do X, Y, and Z in those two areas. Components of those, yes, computer programming, some design, some 3D printing, as Kathy mentioned, some maintenance kinds of things, but the development of those are really left to folks with a 4-year or more degree.
Okay. It seems like all we hear of in the job sector now is technology and terms like that and how it's changing our lives, but do you still see the value of a liberal arts education, Kathy?
Is this a trick question?
Yeah.
Of course, having been a product of that myself. You know, I think, you know, in our mission, inherent in our mission is preparing students and people in the community for jobs and careers. But we go far beyond that in our mission with providing a liberal arts education. Because after all, we recognize that we're working in and living in a much more global society. We're relying on those kinds of skills which I object to being called soft skills. And those are what employers say they need. They need excellent communication skills, the ability to think critically, to come up creatively with answers to new challenges. And that's what a liberal education can help our students prepare for, this constantly changing, diverse world. So it's having those skills and abilities, which is a real focus, not just for our general education courses that you might find in philosophy or humanities, but it's also adopted within the curriculum for those who are interested in becoming a nurse. You want a nurse who can think critically. We have them in cybersecurity and all of our professional technical programs. So definitely, yes. And I would love to get into a debate later about those who say no.
So Kim, when you're focusing on your students, is it mostly on training for particular jobs, or is it helping students to problem solve?
So I have to say, I used that question as the basis of my comments at graduation.
Oh,
So I
no,
want to
really?
thank you for that.
How did I know that?
I was at a loss this year, and so because that's an intriguing question, as if it's either one or the other. And I think Kathy mentioned it in nursing. I mentioned it in automotive. We have a couple of plants up in Ferndale that if you saw excessive vapor in the air, you would hope that you would have some technicians there in whatever fields collaborating together, communicating together, trying to figure out what the issue was, resolving it, and then the vapor goes away if it's supposed to go away. And it's resolved, and that involves communication, it involves critical thinking, it involves problem solving. So in today's world, there is the need for everyone to be able to take those principles of thinking through something, finding appropriate resources, are they valid resources, collaborating and communicating with one another, and problem solving that. So there isn't an either or an or. I'm an example of someone who is more professionally, technically oriented. I'm in agriculture, but I took the pathway of education, but my curriculum was predominantly math and science oriented, and I tried to avoid those liberal arts classes as much as possible. But they were inherent in my curriculum, just as they are at BTC. People need to be able to read, write, communicate electronically, in person, in writing, with customers. They may be able to think critically, and so it isn't an either or, it's a yes, we do both. I do like data. I'm a math science person. So 2 years ago, about 75% of BTC's programs were in workforce, in professional and technical. Now it's 70%. And what's increased? General education. Because employers have said exactly what Kathy has said, that we need people who can work independently, work creatively, and work in a critical fashion with others. So thanks for the sentence. It made it for a great speech.
So this is kind of for all of you. I was wondering how you all work within the local community to provide internships and eventual jobs. Do you have some kind of job placement practices in place that helps? Does the port participate in this?
Yeah, so it's not within much of my realm, but we do have interns. Often those interns are hired afterwards. We just 2 weeks ago hired a young lady who was an intern with us for, I believe, about 6 months, and now she has a mid-level job. So our goals are always to facilitate growth in our own community and support it here, and if we can, we'd love to hire people that are from our community.
So our business partners think internships are fantastic because it's a way of previewing potential employees. And so many of our programs have mandatory internships as part of their applied associate degree. They do it either during the school year or during the summer. One of the reasons members of advisory committees like to serve on advisory committees because they feel like they have first dibs on our students. It's a great marriage of workplace learning and college learning in the internship, which is why we make it mandatory for so many of our programs. Those programs for which it isn't mandatory have things called clinical placements. Again, putting students out in the workplace under supervision. Wouldn't you want that if you had a student nurse coming into your room? So that in itself is their internship, but it's actually clinical placement. It's a vital component of professional technical education.
And we have the same at Whatcom as well, with opportunities for students to interact in actual job situations under supervision. It's been very effective, and sometimes so effective that those interns get hired without even completing their degree or certificate. And that's a no-no when I hear about it. But other than that, everyone's happy, the employers are happy, the students are happy. And we do have a number of them out in the community, and always refer to our advisory committees and other friends out in the community to help us locate those opportunities.
So if you have some opportunities, see me.
Don, the waterfront site, you knew you were going to get asked a question on this. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to lure prospective employers to a unique location. What are we doing to maximize its potential?
So yes, I did know I was going to get the waterfront question. And I do agree, it's an amazing opportunity. I don't want us to forget the rest of our community. Sometimes we put so much energy on the waterfront that we're forgetting all the other opportunities that exist here. The waterfront is a development that's a partnership between the Port, the City of Bellingham, and Harcourt Development. Harcourt has the rights to develop the first 19 acres that we all see out there as being pretty much cleaned up. They're current owners of the granary building, and they, about a month ago, closed on the property next to the new park that's now open. If you haven't been there, it is officially open, and it's a beautiful park. The property adjacent to the park is going to be 3 upscale condos. Harcourt has let us know that they're very interested in developing a high-end hotel with a conference center that will hold 600 to 700 people, which will bring a lot of opportunity for business here. They're also considering seriously building another office building because we're finding ourselves without high-end office space now. And then they're looking for tenants for build-to-suits for jobs that will be those jobs of the future that we're talking about. I know there's been a lot of very strong opinions. I'd love to say I was here during that whole process, but I missed that, and I've gone through my own. But I think we're in a really great place, and we do need to be mindful of how it's developed. But to some extent, there are a few things that are out of the port and the city's control because a developer is under contract, and they were chosen because they have done some amazing work all over the world on similar projects that were cleanup sites along ports and such. Harcourt, the city, and the port have all the intentions to build the site out professionally and make sure that we're attracting companies that offer good employment.
So, and without getting into the debate, but I know a lot of people want to see water-related businesses down there. Is that possible? I mean, I hear you talking about hotels and condos and parks. And what would it look like if we had those? What kind of jobs would those bring?
So I could go back to technology again. We are a port and we support marine trade. It's part of our mission. And I just returned 2 weeks ago from a conference in Quebec City that was an international port city conference. It's called the AIVP. I don't go to many conferences. I think they're overused. But this particular conference really specializes in exactly our situation. How do we grow businesses and still include the general population on the waterfront? As there's more demand for hotels and things on the waterfront, how do we also support the industries that need the waterfront? A great example is All American Marine. We built a new facility for them. They're doing incredibly well. They're employing a lot of people. They're getting lots of new contracts. And they're using that next generation of technology. They developed 2 boats recently that were electric hybrid technology. So even in the marine industry, technology is coming in. And so it brings in clean energy as well as technical jobs from all over the world. So I don't think we have to separate them. I think the future of the waterfront is jobs, the marina, and bringing the community. As a lot of people are worried about what will the effect on downtown be when the waterfront is developed, I think the effect will be very positive. I think the waterfront will be part of downtown eventually, and that it will flow beautifully and it will draw people to both locations.
Well, you mentioned the word trades, so Kim, I'm going to ask you, anyone who's tried to call a plumber for an emergency knows that good luck. And we've heard that there's a big shortage in the trades, electricians, plumbers, and those are well-paying jobs. Is your school involved in teaching those kind of trades? Or I know we've all heard about your famous welding rodeo.
Right, and you too can have a school, oh, no, sorry, that was a different conversation. So to that end, we're adding a building trade certificate program that's starting in 2 weeks, which will be a short-term certificate that does basic construction, framing, drywall, roofing, and then there'll be add-on certificates. Some of the more complicated occupations associated with construction, electrician, for instance, we're adding a cohort. We're remodeling a portion of our site to add a third cohort in electrician, and it's already full, and that's for this fall. We're adding a cohort in welding, talking about marine-based jobs and others, and also one in mechatronics, which is, and you may recall, used to be called industrial maintenance, because someone has to maintain all of these types of systems. What's true with other trades is they're pretty tightly controlled in Whatcom County by unions. And so we just happen to have a great relationship with the electricians union, and so we're able to work with them and partner with them in working with both union and non-union shops, if you will. Other trades are more tightly controlled and prefer to do it through apprenticeship programs, which we're beginning to explore. We're hoping that the building trade certificate will engage us more fully with the unions in Whatcom County so we can do more apprenticeship type programs, on-the-job training with those.
Kathy?
And good luck finding
Yeah.
someone come to your house.
Kathy, does Whatcom have 2-year courses? That I know that like 80% of your student body goes on to a 4-year college is what I read somewhere. And what about 2-year courses that lead right to a job without going?
Yeah, we have a number of certificate programs as well as degree programs, and those certificates are shorter term. We have the usual ones, for example, that what we call, education has their jargon. We have what we call stackable certificates, so that you can get a certification in one area and another, and it may lead to a degree, or it can lead to a degree. One of the newer programs that we have is a certificate in chemical dependency, and chemical is part of our new initiative to meet the need to train professionals who are already out in the field, as well as people who want to get proficient in substance abuse and chemical dependency. And so we have a program that's being offered right now to already licensed master's degree professionals so that they can work in this area. But we're also now developing a program for an associate's degree and hopefully for an applied baccalaureate in the whole area of substance abuse. So we do have those certificates. It depends on the program. But those are options for students, and we often find that students need those shorter goals, and they're attainable, and they can see the end in sight, and they're more likely to succeed in getting and moving on to a bachelor's degree with those certificates in hand.
So we have seen examples in the state, like Walla Walla, where the whole area came together to create an industry. The college, the farmers, the tribes, the business communities. In their case, it was the wine industry. Could this happen here? It caused a renaissance in that area, and do you see that kind of thing happening here? You want to start, Don?
You know, we're working on something a little similar to that. I think we're a very diverse county, so I don't necessarily believe that we're Walla Walla or some of the other Willamette Valley or some of even Skagit, where they're a little bit more limited on what they can do. I think we have many opportunities. We are in the beginning process of putting a partnership together that would be Washington State University, along with the county, the port, and the private sector to do similar to what was done in Skagit County with the bread lab. We're beginning the process of doing in Linden at the fairgrounds what we're calling the berry lab. And the berry lab will be that next generation in agriculture. How do we create berries that produce more, that are more risk tolerant, that taste better, that can be used in different products, things of that nature. So this has already begun. It will, the funding is in the process right now, and it'll, as I mentioned, occur in Linden. I think we're known as an educational community, so people come here to get educated, and we're known for that. And of course, we have our beautiful location adjacent to the San Juans, which, by the way, I'm going to be sailing there 2 hours after I leave here. And so,
If you get your boat put back together.
if I get my boat put back together. So I think the diversity in our geographic location and all the things that we have to offer are a positive thing, and we're probably less likely to just focus on one particular thing.
Can I respond to that?
Absolutely.
And it's absolutely, we should be working together. And I think the greatest challenge is deciding on what that is, that focus is, because as you mentioned, Don, we have so many opportunities out there. But some of our greatest work in higher ed has to do with collaborating with community entities and sectors. And so definitely, I'm often tempted to steal the viticulture program from Walla Walla, having enjoyed their wine a lot. But certainly, I think that would be a really kind of exciting conversation to have. What are the possibilities and how can we work together?
And I'd like to add from a slightly different perspective, what if we became known for the social services that we provide for the 25% of students who don't complete high school here in Whatcom County? If we were to find some solutions for those experiencing homelessness and home insecurity, of which we know there are many. I read somewhere that Bellingham per capita has the highest homelessness rate in the United States. What if we became known as the county where no one who went to school was hungry for even one meal? What if we became known for those things, and then perhaps the next great renaissance of program or focus or industry would come from solving those social issues that we may not believe are prevalent here in Whatcom County, but all you have to do is walk along the waterfront, and you know it's incredibly prevalent here in Whatcom County. What if we became known as collaborators to solve those issues for ourselves?
And, I have to say, Kim, you don't even have to look at the waterfront. We see it every day on our campuses. And I want to thank many of you who brought canned goods, because both of us have food pantries, because about a third of our students on our campuses go without a meal on a daily basis. And so the food pantry is something that our students have started, and I believe at BTC as well. And it's emptied almost on a weekly basis. And so we have that problem right there next to our offices and next to our classrooms.
I'm sure if you forgot to bring a can of food, you could probably give them a check, too.
The speaker's fees.
Yes. Right. That's your fee for today, in lieu of the speaker fee. So Kim, you opened an interesting possibility. Where do you see that coming from? Who do you see? It takes, in Walla Walla, it took someone to spearhead the effort. Who's to spearhead the effort here?
Well, I think I'm looking ahead at the Rotary program, and the mayor and Jack Lowe's the county executive, and I've had conversations with mental health professionals, certainly our elected officials, our boards of trustees who are government appointed. It's difficult to step outside of our everyday issues and think globally. There's some examples. I think Spokane has a pretty successful example of how they were able to do that and who is at the table. I've just begun having those conversations, and hopefully as we have more and more of those conversations, and it becomes more and more of in our forefront, that we have a responsibility as a society to ensure that people have shelter and have enough necessities to be able to be productive, which is what we're trying to do with education. It's a whole host of people that need to be at the table. I see a potential grant in providing someone the space and the time to do that. I think it would be an exciting grant here in Whatcom County. Will I write that? We're on tape, right? So
You got a job, new job.
I think there are ways, though, to adopt best practices that are prevalent throughout the country and throughout some of the communities in Washington. For example, in Tacoma Community College, where I once worked, they have a housing voucher program for students. They provide homeless students a place to live while they're a student at Tacoma Community College and maintain a certain GPA. So there are ways of getting at some of the issues, but it would take a collective whole to try to attach our efforts in every direction, whether it's housing, food, education, and certainly you've heard of numerous initiatives around the state about providing free educational opportunities for people going to community colleges, and that's part of that effort as well.
So Don, you mentioned coming here and the housing being a real problem because of the price of it, and that's something that companies do look at when they move their businesses here. Do you see a path to helping that situation if we address these issues, or?
Besides a recession?
That might happen too. But then we wouldn't get the new companies.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, we have to accept the reality that Bellingham in particular is just, it's not known as, and it is not considered an affordable community. We're more upscale. I do think, what we were talking about with Walla Walla, I strongly believe a diverse economy is a much more powerful economy, one that can stand the blows of time, and if there was a wine problem, a disease or something, then you have an entire industry wipe out a community. But I think the housing issue here is in alignment with a long growth of the economy. Many communities that are doing well are having the exact same problems, and it's not only the cost of them, there's just a shortage of housing.
Right.
And so we weren't building for a long time. The solution, I believe, is just the same thing as our economy. We're a regional economy now, and so we need to not separate Bellingham from the rest of the county. And there are plenty of affordable housing opportunities that are within the region, and we need to embrace that.
Well, speaking of the county, one of our largest economic drivers in our county is agriculture. And you mentioned one thing, but think about what we can do to help one of our largest economic drivers survive and prosper.
Yeah, so in general, the industries are prospering here. I think it's promoting ourselves. It's thinking about exporting products. It's working with our partners. The things are always changing. We're about to go through potentially a little bit of a trade war that might affect our agricultural businesses. We surely have a lot of people from British Columbia come down and drink our milk. I'm not an agricultural specialist, but we spend, our team, and we will continue to spend a lot of time in East County and with the small cities, learning from them as to what they need and how we can help facilitate that.
So are there any specific college programs that either of you have that technologically help farmers? I mean, do you have an agricultural program?
So I consider fisheries an agriculture program, and that's how
Absolutely.
it is categorized. And so we have a fisheries and aquaculture science program, and we were talking about what is an industry that we can grapple with. I think we're all reading about what's happening to the salmon runs of late, and what can the waterfront development do about creating perhaps an interpretive center relative to the importance of the salmon runs to our economy and certainly to the other species of particularly orcas that thrive on the salmon. I know the runs have been really weak this particular year, so what are we doing? In aquaculture, what are we doing with shellfish and those kinds of things? So I think that area of agriculture where BTC offers that program, and in regards to the money in agriculture is in processing, not in the growing. And so what we're doing with industrial maintenance and welding and machining is helping agriculture become more process-oriented, which is where the money market is for that. And you mentioned what they're doing with the berry farm. It's pretty exciting that berries that used to have to be hand-picked, and that labor force is no longer here, can now be, we're working on it being mechanically harvested, so it doesn't ruin the berry, right? Because the money's in the berry, not in jam made from crushed berries. So all of those things are helping the process of agriculture keep the money here in Whatcom County rather than shipping product outside the county, which happens in another state where I lived, and it was another county that prospered on agriculture, not the county in which it was grown. So I think that's what our focus has been in agriculture, keeping the processing here.
Okay. And looking to the future, I know, Kathy, you recently got a grant, I believe, about aerospace?
Yes.
Yes, can you
State
tell us a
grant.
little bit about that?
Well, it's actually state dollars that were allocated by the legislature to encourage and support programs to support the aerospace industry. And in our particular case, we don't have an aircraft maintenance program, but we do have a strong emerging engineering program. And so those dollars were used so that we could expand our engineering program, and we could look at not only supplying, say, for example, the refineries with a trained workforce as engineers, but we could also look at supporting those other industries that also are in need for engineering students. And so the grant was just a fantastic opportunity for us to hire a new instructor, to get and secure equipment, to be able to outfit a lab for these students. And so it's a wonderful opportunity for many of our students that are coming from our local high schools.
Well, we hear pilots are in a short supply. Do either of you think about having the pilot training?
Yes, they are.
Anyone have airplanes to donate?
And what's also in short supply are airframe and power plant, the mechanics to do the airplanes. And one of the challenges is airspace. So you have to have airspace to be able to do pilot programs. I came from a college that had both a pilot program and airframe and power plant. And it takes a commitment from carriers to be able to do that. Now, Bellingham is kind of a natural place because we have an airport, obviously, and we have free airspace. And so we're in conversations with other technical colleges that have pilot programs to see if we can somehow be a satellite site. You may not know this, but pilots don't make as much money as we think they all do. And so one of the issues we have with pilots is they all start as regional pilots where they don't make much money, and it takes years to be able to make money, whereas a few decades ago, it didn't matter where you were flying, you made a lot of money. Also, with the downsizing of military, there aren't enough pilots coming out of the military wanting to transition to, private companies. So it's an issue that we're grappling with, and hopefully we can partner with folks about that because of the airspace here at Bellingham, right? I do want to say that BTC also is a recipient of those aerospace grants, and we use those funds to expand our welding, our mechatronics, and machining programs, offering instruction to 72 new students.
Great. So it's getting time that we want to turn this over to the audience, but I have one more question for all of you. When you're planning for the future and thinking of the challenges ahead, what would it take to help make your dreams for the future come true? Dawn, we'll let you start.
Well, getting my sailboat put back together would be a beginning. A community that respects different opinions but supports each other as we move forward, that a community that doesn't interfere with growth yet wants to have quality growth. A community that's willing to put in infrastructure so that we could attract the companies that we want to have to support quality jobs. And a place in which we work together to maintain the super quality of life, but we have bills to pay, and so that takes tax revenue, and tax revenue takes jobs. And so I hope that we don't pit sides against each other, and that we find common ground and work together to get things done.
Kathy?
I have so many things on the list.
That's all right. We can listen.
But in reference to the audience here, all of you who are very community-minded, I think one of the things is encouraging all of you and getting every community person to support higher education opportunities and access to higher ed in this county, to all our county citizenry. As you know, we are state-funded, but getting less so. When I first came here 11 years ago, I think I was looking at a budget that was supported about 70% of our budget was supported by the state, but now it's less than 50%. And so that's a great worry, because oftentimes that gap is filled by increased tuition and fees. And so our education here at Whatcom is becoming not as accessible to many potential students as it once was. So it's asking all of you to get involved, and thank you, Luann, for being here and talking to legislators about the importance of higher education, because the state is not constitutionally mandated to support higher education. They are to support K through 12. And so whenever there are budget cuts, we are always at the front line of getting those budget cuts. So it's the constant messaging to the legislators, to our governor, and to voters that higher education matters, and it matters here in Whatcom County. So in addition to advocacy, it's volunteering to work with students as tutors, as sitting on an advisory committee, and participating in helping us to raise funds for scholarships for our students. So getting involved with higher education in whatever way you can would be my ideal.
Yeah, ditto.
Ditto.
She said it very well.
Okay. Well, now it's your turn, and we have two people with microphones. Michelle is over here, and there's a question right here that Dee will start with.
I'm Kay Sardo, and my question is, what is the backlog for having people not have to wait in line for the programs? I'm thinking about nursing, but I'm also thinking, having lived in that world for a while, but I'm also thinking about the other wonderful programs you describe and what the capacity. And I know you talked about funding, and maybe that's it. But I think there are people waiting in line to be trained.
Yeah, we call those wait lists. And actually what we've done in some of our programs is we've gone to an annual entry requirement. So I'll just use nursing as an example. We have one point of entry into nursing. So you'll come, prospective students will come on July 28th, and the first 24 will get fall, the next 24 will have a winter start, and the next 24 will have spring. And we've done that with several other programs as well. So what we have found is if students know, because they're all doing their prerequisites right now, if students know that I can't get in fall, but I have a spot in winter or spring in this year, they're more apt to come back for winter and spring. It's this quarterly wait list where you just kind of keep adding to this endless list, and we throw the list out every year. So this will be our second year of doing that with nursing. We're doing it with other programs. And so what the challenge is with the wait list is people don't know. Once people know, and then we can offer them additional classes or different assistance so that they'll stick with us those 2 quarters that they're not in the program so that they can start in the spring if that's when their start is. So you're absolutely right. We're addressing that situation. In many cases, though, the demand for spaces is greater than our ability to provide the space. Nursing is a great example because of clinical placement. This community can only handle so much clinical placement.
And I do think both our institutions work very closely, because if we don't have the capacity, we often refer students to BTC's program and vice versa. So we're very fortunate in this county to have 2 very good nursing programs.
Hi, thank you for your good work. As I move around the community of Bellingham, one of the things I see is a lot of gray hair, and I'm on my way to being one of those as well. And I feel like the elder, the aging population here in Bellingham and in much of our country is really a resource and something that I think we should be thinking about, both in terms of, what kinds of services can we provide, but also even more than that, what sort of intersection can we have around the aging population that might be opportunities for innovating technologies for helping people stay in place and age at home or to move into assisted living facilities or whatever it is. But I feel like, we have a community here that could be like a hotbed of research or something like that. And I'm just wondering, are there any thoughts or, discussions that you're having around how to utilize the amazing resource of elders that we have in the community?
We have a successful program, patient navigation, and it often relies on volunteers, but also trained individuals to help navigate the health system for seniors. Many of our clientele were seniors, but also people who had family members in terms of special needs. And so that's one area in which we really captured a number of recently retired individuals who wanted to give some of their time. And we have a number of other kinds of research projects and ways in which community members can lend their expertise to our business students, for example, our accounting students, and so forth.
In terms of the port and the economy, a very close partner of the port is TAG, Technology Alliance Group. And they're made up of a lot of current professionals, but the majority of them have retired and are putting their energy into connecting the local economy with potential technology jobs throughout the Pacific Northwest.
I'm Gloria Rhodes, and my question's directed to Don Goldberg. Okay. We've had a decades-long effort for a new public library, and it's failed, particularly due to the recession. But now, as we're coming out of it, there doesn't seem to be a real movement for a new library. And it would bring the community together. How viable is it to put one down in the waterfront, near the park, and bring the community down there?
There's a number of phases at the waterfront. As I mentioned before, the first phase, the property that we see as being cleaned up and developed is out of control to some degree of the port and the city, in the sense that it's being purchased by a private developer to bring uses down there. So to some degree, that question would be, if it was on the first 19 acres, addressed to Harcourt as to whether that they can be convinced that that would be financially beneficial to their project, because they are a developer and they're looking to make profit and to be highly successful. So as you put it, I mean, if they believed that that was a draw to the park and that it was beneficial to the region, then it would make economic sense. So that's the private sector model. in terms of the library itself, I believe that's probably more addressed to either the city or the county who are more in control over libraries than the port or economic development. My grandmother was a librarian, my sister was one, so and I read. So, there's this battle. When I went to Ferndale for the first time, I actually thought City Hall was the library because it was such a nice building and I couldn't find the mayor. I do believe in libraries personally, but there's, just like retail sales, there's a lot of competition for libraries on the internet. And so that's the battle to some degree, is a lot of people are downloading their books, they're researching online. And as I mentioned, I'm clearly not a library specialist, but I don't know how to really answer it directly from a port point of view.
We have one more, I think, time for.
Question for you, Dr. Brown and Dr. Perry. You spoke about internships, and internships have offered me incredible opportunities through my education and my career. However, they're oftentimes quite underpaid, and in Whatcom County, we have the city marks a livable wage as $15.04 an hour. We make substantially less here in Whatcom County than almost anywhere else. We have an average income here of $44,000 a year. And as rising home costs go up, it makes it look increasingly difficult for a person like myself who grew up here and was educated here to want to live here. And I was wondering about, through the internship programs you have, is there any enforcement on, or maybe encouragement from your part for those employers to compensate people appropriately for the work that they're doing and for the skills that they've developed at their higher education?
So the challenge with internship is that the college is interested in the employee or the person and the intern getting a breadth of skills, and the employer is interested in getting a worker. And so sometimes those butt heads. And so unfortunately, one of the remedies is that they're unpaid, because I understand that. And so we encourage employers to pay, but it's not a requirement. And it's just a component of the program. And it's ironic because students pay to do their internship because it's credits, right? And yet they don't get paid when they do it. That's not a unique circumstance here. It's widespread through education. Similarly, RNs on their clinical placement don't get paid for being on the floor. It is a challenge, which is why when Kathy was talking about, scholarships, you have no idea what a student can do with $250 scholarship. It may mean the difference from them staying in school and not being in school. So I know you're not going to be happy with that answer. I am not either. We encourage our employers, one, not to steal our employees before they finish the program, and to offer living wage paid internships. If we made that a requirement, we wouldn't have placements for all the students we have. I know it's unsatisfactory. That's the way it is right now.
Well, I'm sorry to end on that down note.
Thanks, Kim.
But we want to thank our speakers. I think they all gave us so much information.